Before the last subject exam of the college entrance examination, Shadow received a call from Lore, the class belle, saying that she was being followed and was very scared, hoping that Shadow could go to rescue her. I advised Shadow not to go and immediately called the police. I also told the teacher and his parents about the situation. The teacher and his parents also persuaded him that with the police around, he should focus on the exam with peace of mind. In the end, he successfully completed the college entrance examination, and several top universities in the country extended offers to him. However, Lore was found dead in the water. 10 years later, we graduated and got married smoothly. Our relationship was affectionate, and we became the envy of others. I also had the crystallization of our love in my belly. But just when my amniotic fluid broke and Shadow was driving me to the hospital, he directly drove the car into the river. If you hadn't called the police and told my mom and teacher that I was born to save Lore, they wouldn't have stopped me. And Lore wouldn't have died. You and your child must be buried with her, he said. I desperately knocked on the car window for help, and in the end, both I and the baby lost our lives. It turned out that Shadow had always harbored a grudge against me for stopping him from rescuing Lore, and believed that my obstruction had led to Lore's death. When I opened my eyes again, I was reborn just before entering the examination room for the last subject of the college entrance examination. Shadow said anxiously, "Lore, I'm coming right away. Wait for me." "Aurora." Lore said someone is following her. "And she's very scared. I'm going to save her," Shadow said. Hearing Shadow's voice, I felt a chill down my spine. My last impression before dying was that he drove the car into the river. The doors and windows were tightly closed, and I and the baby in my womb had no way to survive. We were drowned alive in the filthy river water. I desperately knocked on the car window and asked him why he was doing this. "Why, Shadow? Why are you doing this? I'm still carrying our baby. We graduated together from a top university and then worked hard together in a big city. We successfully settled down in this city. We had been married for less than a year, and our relationship had always been very good. We had always been the envy of our classmates and friends. I had always thought that I was very lucky to have found the right person and would spend the rest of my life happily." As the oxygen in the car became less and less and the water filled the entire car, my consciousness became more and more blurred. Finally, heading for Feldway and Sasher, I heard his voice full of hatred. "If you hadn't called the police and told my mom and teacher that I was going to save Lore, they wouldn't have stopped me. And Lore wouldn't have died. You and your child must be buried with her." It turned out that Shadow had always resented me for stopping him from rescuing Lore and considered me the direct culprit of Lore's death. So he pretended to be friendly with me for many years. When I was about to give birth, he deliberately drove the car into the river, dying together with me and the baby in my belly to pay tribute to his lost love. However, calling the police and informing the teacher and parents of the situation is the first choice when facing danger. Also, he would miss the last subject of the college entrance examination, and all his years of hard work would be in vain. "Aurora?" Shadow's shout pulled me out of my memories. I was really reborn. It was now 40 minutes before the last subject exam of the college entrance examination, and we were queuing up to enter the examination room. And Shadow had also received a call from Lore and was telling me that he was going to save Lore. Looking at the face in front of me, I couldn't wait to tear him apart. But the time and place were not right now. I said calmly, "This is your own exam. You make the decision yourself. Why are you telling me?" Since he had lost his mind and insisted on playing the hero and giving up the college entrance examination, of course, I had no objection. In the previous life, at this exact time, Shadow also received a distress call from Lore. He was very anxious and told me that he was going to save Lore. At that time, I felt that the situation was very dangerous, and told him to call the police immediately and inform the teacher and parents. After his mother knew about it, she forced him to enter the examination room. And the teacher also comforted him, saying that with the police, Lore could be rescued smoothly. So, he and I entered the examination room to take the exam and left our phones with the teacher and the police to contact Lore and help her. In the end, he successfully completed the college entrance examination. and his score ranked high in the province. Several top universities in the country extended offers to him. However, Lure was drowned. After the police investigation, it was determined that she had accidentally fallen into the water, and the surrounding surveillance cameras did not find anyone following her. It turned out that everything was a self-directed and self-acted play by her. But Shadow blamed Lure's death on me. In this life, I chose to stand by and do nothing. Seeing my indifferent attitude, Shadow thought it was a bit strange. Aurora, aren't you going to stop me? I really admired this shameless person. Shadow, we're just classmates. Lure's distress call was made to you. I can't make the decision for you. I still have the college entrance examination in the afternoon, so I'll enter the examination room first. Fine, Shadow said with a sarcastic laugh. I really misjudged you. I always thought you were a kind and warm-hearted person. I didn't expect you to be so cold-blooded. You actually stand by and do nothing when a classmate is in danger. I can call the police and report it to the teacher for her. I took out my phone and was about to make a call. But you have to tell me where she is and what the specific situation is. And she has been calling your name out of fear, but she didn't say where she is either. Don't pretend to be kind. I'll solve it myself. Lure is still waiting for me. I'm going to save her. Don't stop me. It seemed that Shadow was determined to be the hero who saved Lure and wanted to go alone, even though he was powerless. And I turned around and walked into the college entrance examination room, stepping towards a wonderful life away from Shadow. The exam started, and Shadow didn't show up. It seemed that he got what he wanted this time. And he couldn't blame me this time. I grew up with Shadow. My mother and his mother were colleagues. And our two families lived in the same unit, one floor above the other. I thought I knew him well. But in the previous life, it was only until I was about to die that I knew he had been in love with Lure since high school. He married me on the one hand to take revenge on me, and on the other hand, because his mother urged him to get married and took a fancy to my family's assets. When I got home from the examination room, before I even entered the house, I heard Shadow's mother talking to my mother, Aurora's mom. I've already estimated the scores of the previous subjects for you. English in the afternoon is Shadow's best subject. He can at least score 660 this year. How did Aurora do in the exam? I think you don't have to work so hard. Just apply for a school in the same city as Shadow. Shadow will definitely take good care of Aurora. Then they can get married after graduation. And we can have grandchildren in a few years. My mother was so angry that she wanted to go up and quarrel. I quickly held her back and chose to speak up and fight back. Auntie, the results haven't come out yet. It's not certain who scores higher between me and Shadow. One shouldn't be too happy too early. Just as Shadow's mother was about to point at me and lecture me, Shadow came back all wet, as if he had been soaked in water for a long time. Shadow's mother quickly stepped forward to show her concern. Shadow, what happened to you? Why did you fall into the river? How was the exam? English is your best subject. You must have done well. Calculating like this, you can get into Huada University. Hearing Shadow's mother's series of words, Shadow, who had already missed the exam, became even more impatient. Mom, I'm tired enough. I'm all wet now. Why are you talking so much? Then he slammed the door and went back home. Seeing her son shouting at her in front of others, Shadow's mother felt embarrassed and slunk back home. My parents saw this scene and couldn't help but sigh. How did such a good child turn out like this? In the past, as soon as we had a holiday, Shadow and I would do our homework together. Sometimes, our two families would go out and play together. As soon as the college entrance examination ended this time, my parents took me on a trip. We didn't get home until it was almost time to check the college entrance examination results. During this period, the class group was also not quiet. Shadow chased after Lure every day during the holiday, and the two of them finally got together. They showed their affection in the class group all day long. The next morning, when it was time to check the college entrance examination scores, although I had experienced the college entrance examination once in the previous life, I was still excited and nervous. My dad even started burning incense and praying to the Buddha. I entered the admission ticket information and other information in turn, and the score page popped up. I got 662 points. The same score as in the previous life. My parents jumped up happily. And our family laughed and cried. What? How could you only score 498 points? And your English score is actually 0? Shadow's mother's shrill voice came. It turned out that Shadow's mother had been showing off outside today, that Shadow could score more than 650 in the college entrance examination. A few neighbors who liked to watch the excitement thought about it, and, being bored, came to Shadow's home to see how many points Shadow could actually get. The door wasn't closed by the last person who entered. So the sound spread out. Shadow's mother grabbed Shadow. Come on. Let's go to the Education Bureau. Your usual English score is above 140. How could it be 0 this time? There must be a mistake in the marking. Let's go and find out. She was about to pull Shadow outside. Shadow suddenly shook off his mother's hand. Mom, Wing Tao. There's no need to go. I didn't take the English exam. So it's 0. I didn't tell you these days just because I was afraid you'd worry. Shadow's father and mother were struck like lightning. I clearly sent you to the examination room that day. How could you not take the exam? With this score, you can't even reach the first batch admission line. And you can't apply for good schools and majors. Shadow's mother howled. Mom. Don't worry. I've already chosen a university. It's Y University. I'm so smart that I can find a job even without going to a good school. If not, I can take the postgraduate entrance examination. Shadow explained impatiently. Y University? Why did you choose this school? It's a private university. Not even as good as some good junior colleges. With this score, you can choose other schools. Take another look. Shadow's mother suggested worriedly. Before Shadow could answer, Laura opened the door and walked in. Shadow. I've been waiting for you downstairs for a long time. Why haven't you come down yet? Have you checked the scores? Are you really going to Y University? And our schools will be next to each other. Laura had just entered the door and hadn't felt the chaotic situation yet. She was touched that Shadow had applied for Y University for her. But every word she said was piercing. Who are you? Why did you just barge into my house and seem so familiar with my son? Shadow's mother asked angrily. Mom. This is my girlfriend. Laura. Shadow quickly stepped forward and pulled Laura behind him to introduce her to his mother. Hello. I'm Laura. Shadow's girlfriend. Shadow didn't take the exam because he was saving me. Please don't blame him. Laura leaned against Shadow and explained the reason for him. Hearing these words, Shadow's mother almost fainted from anger. Shadow's father supported her to keep her standing and said with difficulty. You didn't take the last subject just for her. How could you be so foolish? Looking at the couple's matching outfits, Shadow's mother was filled with anger. She rushed forward and raised her hand to hit Laura. It's because of you that my son can't go to a university. You're a troublemaker. How can you be so shameless? You seduced my son. You two must break up immediately. Laura couldn't dodge in time. The first blow landed solidly on Laura's face. When she was about to strike the second time, Shadow stopped her. Shadow pushed his mother away with force. And then checked the injury on Laura's face with great concern. However, Shadow's mother fell to the ground, crying and scolding. Shadow's father, who was beside her, helped her up. The look in his eyes as he looked at his son was full of disappointment. We've raised you so hard for all these years. Do you think you can live up to me and your father? Break up with her immediately. Your father and I will find a school for you to repeat your senior year. If you study for another year, you'll definitely be able to get into University A. Shadow's mother stood up and said. I'm already an adult. I'll take responsibility for myself. It's none of your business. Shadow said fiercely, looking at his parents. Since I could get such high scores before, it proves that I have the talent and the ability to study. I'll decide my own life. Laura's more important to me than a good school. For her, not to mention missing one exam, I'm even willing to give up the college entrance examination. She is the most important person in my life. After saying that, ignoring the feelings of his parents behind him, he took Laura's hand and turned to leave. For soon, the news that Shadow missed an exam for Laura spread in the community and the school. Even some self-media platforms noticed the potential hot topic and came to interview them. In the video, Shadow and Lore were a perfect match. And they only had eyes for each other. Student Shadow. We know that your usual English score is around 140. If you performed normally, you could have scored 650. How did you make the decision at that time? The reporter asked. When Lore called me, I was just about to enter the examination room. But when I heard her cry for help, I directly gave up the last exam and ran to save her. Because I know that I won't regret giving up one exam. I still have other opportunities. But if I give up on her, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. Shadow's voice in the video was firm. And his expression was full of happiness. Lore showed a sweet smile. And the two hugged each other tightly. During the period of checking the college entrance examination scores, the news of these two senior 3 students instantly became a hot topic. Shadow is so handsome. He directly gave up the exam for the one he loves. It's like a hero saving the beauty. Is this a plot from a novel? I'm really just an NPC. The two of them are so happy. No matter what happens, they think of each other immediately and put each other in the most important position. The happiness in their eyes is almost overflowing. Am I the only one who thinks something is wrong? When in danger, shouldn't the first thing be to call the police? I agree with the above. I also think the whole development is a bit dramatic. Let's wait for the reversal. There were more and more discussions on the internet. Shadow was even regarded as a model for bravely saving people by some. Some live streaming platforms even invited the two of them to promote products. But it was complained about by some parents of students. On the day of the graduation dinner, Shadow and Lore walked in hand and instantly became the focus of everyone. The boys admired Shadow for his courage and determination. And finally, he won the girl's heart. The girls envied Lore for being firmly chosen by someone. The top student Shadow was willing to give up the exam to save her. Only the teacher couldn't help but sigh. Maybe he was thinking that if Shadow had called the police or told him, the matter could have been resolved smoothly. Everyone chatted and laughed at the dinner table. Since it was the last meal for senior 3 students, everyone cherished it very much. Although they couldn't drink alcohol, they still toasted each other with drinks and boiled water. The atmosphere was extremely harmonious. Aurora, I'd like to toast you. Thank you for always helping me during senior 3. And I also congratulate you on getting such a high score. I wish you can be admitted to University A. My desk mate in senior 3 even raised his glass to thank me. I felt like crying and laughing at the same time. Before I could say anything, Shadow suddenly pulled Lore over and said sarcastically, some people may seem to be good at studying and get high scores. They act like decent people on the surface. But in essence, they are very cold-blooded and heartless. They remain indifferent when their classmates cry for help in danger. You'd better stay away from such people, or you might be harmed by them without even knowing it. Shadow, are you talking about me? Seeing that Shadow was about to act crazy again, I wasn't going to tolerate him. Isn't it? When Lore called for help, you were right there. But you didn't save her. Instead, you taunted her coldly. Do you think you can live up to the recognition of your classmates in the class? Shadow's words seemed to be standing up for his classmates. Aurora, how could you do this? Even if we didn't have a very good relationship before, we are classmates in the same class. How could you just turn a blind eye? Lore also chimed in beside him. Have you fallen into the water and forgotten to pick up your brains? I said I would call the police at that time. But you didn't tell me the information. I told you to tell the teacher and your parents. But you didn't. Did you really want me to also miss the exam to save you? My arm is even thinner than Lore's. Did you really want me to risk my life? And there is a video on the internet that is quite interesting. I suggest that all the classmates, including you, take a look at it. It turned out that on the day of the incident, a fisherman filmed a video of the two of them. The video was very long. Nearly an hour. The two people in the video had mosaics on their faces and were wearing school uniforms. But because they had deliberately worn school uniforms for an interview to show their love before, those who had seen the previous video could recognize them at a glance. At first, Lore sat alone on a bench under the shade of a tree for more than 10 minutes. And then she called while crying. After hanging up the phone, she leisurely rested on the bench under the shade of the tree again, put on headphones and played games. After nearly 20 minutes, Shadow ran over out of breath. Laura cried and threw herself into Shadow's arms. The two hugged each other tightly. When they were deeply in love, they kissed affectionately. Shadow slept and accidentally fell into the river, and Laura also fell in. When the fisherman saw the scene, he didn't care about filming the video anymore. He quickly rushed to save them and finally pulled the two of them out of the water. 5. This video led to a great reversal of the previous story. Before, one of their images was that of a young girl in her prime who was being followed. She was so panicked that she called Shadow for help. Even though Shadow missed an exam because of this, Laura was the object of public concern and sympathy. Some people even wanted to call the police for her. However, in the video, there was only her. And she didn't show any signs of panic or urgency. She was even leisurely listening to music. And Shadow's heroic image was also greatly diminished. Originally, having fulfilled YMCA, netizens thought that he had fallen into the river to drive away the person who was following Laura and to save Laura. However, in the video, it was because the two of them were so absorbed in kissing that he accidentally slept and fell into the river. This video immediately made their images plummet from a high position to the bottom. However, some extreme fans who were still immersed in their love story actually attacked the fisherman who posted the video, saying that he had violated other people's privacy and had ill intentions. Some people also said that he had colluded with the two of them to hype up the story and gain traffic. Angry, having fulfilled my obsession, he responded that he filmed the video because he wanted to show it to his wife to prove that he was fishing. He was there first, and the position they chose just happened to be in the shot. He posted it because his daughter actually said that she yearned for such a passionate love. Scared, he posted the video in his phone overnight to tell the public the truth. When they saw the exposed video, the expressions of the two of them instantly turned from sunny to gloomy. Shadow said to Laura with a gloomy face, his voice full of anger, "You said that someone was following you, and that you were so scared that you hid there. Why is there only you in the video? Why did you lie to me?" Shadow's shout made those of us watching feel nervous. Laura shook her head in a panic, and tears instantly fell from her eyes. "I didn't. I really didn't lie to you. There was someone following me before. He left after I called you. You have to believe me," Laura explained with a crying voice. "Then why didn't you tell me that the person had left in the first place? You made me foolishly rush over to find you, which caused me to miss the English exam. Do you know that if I had taken this exam, I would be the top student in the class today?" Shadow shouted at Laura, and the hatred in his eyes was terrifying. "I'm sorry. I was so scared at that time." Laura held Shadow's hand and kept explaining. But Shadow didn't listen to her explanation anymore. He directly slammed the door and left, and Laura quickly chased after him. The rest of us looked at each other in dismay. We had had enough of the drama and couldn't eat anymore. "Soon, I shall leave too." We dispersed, watching the two of them turn on each other. I really felt relieved. But I also felt even more desolate inside. In my previous life, I wrongly trusted others and ended up with the tragic fate of losing both my child and myself. What Shadow had suffered was still far from enough. Since the day of checking the college entrance examination scores, the noise next door hadn't stopped. Sometimes, we could even hear Shadow's mother crying and scolding from morning till night. According to the nosy neighbor, Shadow seemed to be persuaded to repeat his senior year and take the exam the next year. And Laura seemed to have really fallen in love with Shadow. On a sweltering summer day with a temperature of nearly 40 degrees Celsius, she waited for Shadow downstairs for nearly 2 hours. Shadow's mother was so angry that she stepped forward and cursed. "You little fox spirit. You're here to harm my son again. I'll beat you to death." As she said that, she was about to reach out and pull Laura's hair. At this time, Shadow, who had been watching from upstairs, ran over and pulled his mother away. "Mom, it's not Laura's fault. It's my own decision. I've already thought it through. I won't repeat my senior year. I'll go to university." "Why? Really? Shadow? Do you really not blame me? Then are you still willing to be with me?" Laura asked with surprise and a bit of unease in her eyes. "Laura, I've never blamed you. The words I said that day were also influenced by others. We will always be together. You are the most important person in my life. Shadow turned to her and said. Lore wept with joy. And the two hugged each other again. Shadow's mother was stunned on the spot as if struck by lightning. She didn't react for a moment. Didn't you just say that you were going to repeat your senior year? Why don't you want to do it now? As long as you perform normally. There's no problem for you to get into university, eh? Why would you give up? Mom. Don't always try to control me. I have my own plans for the future. Even if I don't go to university, I can still find my own way. Shadow said confidently. Hearing this, I knew that the old Shadow had also come back. Before, I was still hesitating whether I should take revenge since the current Shadow hadn't really caused me any harm yet. But seeing Shadow forgiving Lore abnormally and giving up repeating his senior year, with that familiar expression and tone, he was the person who had lived with me for many years in my previous life. I knew that he had also come back. 6 The next day, as I was walking on the road, the neighbor in the community was chatting with my mother. Aurora's mother. Aurora is really amazing. I heard that the admissions office at University A has even called her several times. Only a few people in our city can be admitted to University A in a year. You're going to enjoy a good life now. If my naughty kid could get such a high score, I would even go and buy lottery tickets. Xiao Hai's mother said enviously. It's all thanks to Aurora's mother's own hard work. I feel sorry for her when I see her working so hard day by day. Xiao Hai is also very excellent. He's a sports student with special skills. The two parents flattered each other. And I felt my face getting hot as I listened beside them. At this moment, Shadow came over. Aurora's mother. I want to have a private talk with you. Seeing that Shadow said he wanted to talk to me alone, the parents stopped talking and looked over. Auntie. Aurora's mother. I don't mean anything else. I just want to say a few words to you. Shadow said. My mother turned to ask for my opinion. Since I also wanted to see what he had to say, I agreed. We walked to the pond in the community park. The water in the pond reflected the figures of the two of us. Shadow spoke first. Aurora's mother. I know you've come back too. Don't call me Aurora's mother. It makes me feel sick. If you have something to say it quickly. I need to go home. I interrupted him. I know you blame me. I'm sorry to you. But this time you didn't stop me and made me miss the exam. I don't blame you. I've always regarded you as my sister. If you say such disgusting things again, I'll leave, I said impatiently. Aurora. We both come back. This is a chance given to us by heaven to start over. I saved Lore. I hope you won't hate her because of me. She's innocent. Have you still not cleared the water that got into your head in your last life? How did I disturb you too? When I see you too, I feel so disgusted that I want to take a detour. I was so angry that I wished I could pour disinfectant into his head. There were too many bacteria in his mind. Lore told me that you had someone take the previous video. Lore's father works in your father's company and was recently fired for no reason. You mean I asked my dad to do that? That's really ridiculous. I laughed out loud. Not to mention that I didn't know that Lore's father worked with my father. Even if I knew, I wouldn't have asked my dad to do that because they don't deserve it. And neither do you. I was too lazy to talk more with someone who lived in his own world and was always self-righteous. I turned around and went home. Soon, let out a low sigh. My admission notice arrived. It was from University A. When I opened the door to receive the express delivery, Shadow and Lore happened to go out together. Looking at the admission notice from University A in my hand, Shadow pretended not to care. But his tightly clenched hands still revealed his emotions. I was too lazy to pay attention to them. Just as I was about to celebrate with my parents, Lore stopped me. Classmate Aurora. I know you like Shadow. But now I'm with Shadow. I hope you can bless us and stop disturbing him. Lore said, holding Shadow's arm and declaring her sovereignty. As if she had imagined something in her mind. Do you two just daydream all day long? You think of trash as treasure and assume that others are also crazy. You two should stay together all the time. Letting either of you out is like polluting the environment. People who are mean will eventually be punished by fate. I was too lazy to pay attention to them and turned around to go home. Soon, without a lull sigh, it was time for the university to start. I also successfully entered the gate of my dream university. With the experience from the previous life and the goal plan I had made long ago, I led a busy and fulfilling life every day. 3 or 4 years passed quickly. In the first semester of my senior year, I successfully obtained the qualification to be recommended for postgraduate study without taking the entrance exam and had the opportunity to continue my studies. All my efforts over the years finally paid off. During the summer vacation of that year, when I went home, I happened to meet Shadow. We hadn't seen each other for several years. My father's career was developing better and better, and since I wasn't studying in my hometown anymore, our family discussed and moved to a bigger new house, no longer being neighbors with his family. But I kept hearing news about him. My classmates said that when he first entered the school, he became the focus of everyone's attention. Regardless of his character, his learning ability and talent were still there. He easily outperformed the freshmen of the same grade, ranked first in the grade, and won various honors from the school. Laura entered a junior college near his school through the single recruitment. But she didn't care about her studies at all. She only knew how to go out and have fun every day. Skipping classes, going to bars, etc., were all common occurrences. And she also made a large group of new friends. At first, Shadow wanted Laura to study hard and not go out to play all the time. But Laura didn't listen to him at all. Instead, she deliberately got close to some male friends, making Shadow jealous. As a result, Shadow became more and more nervous about watching over her. Sometimes, he even skipped classes to go out and play with Laura. At first, he could still get scholarships because of his good grades. But later, he paid less and less attention to his studies. Failing courses and getting into fights became common. And Shadow became more and more indulged in this easy life and stopped studying hard. His talent and ability were almost exhausted. In his senior year, he finally started preparing for the postgraduate entrance examination under his mother's nagging. But according to his friends who knew him well, he went out to play every now and then during the preparation period and was addicted to online games. He forced others to play with him, and they couldn't refuse. The moment he saw me, Shadow was obviously taken aback. Laura beside him noticed this and held Shadow's arm even tighter. After not seeing each other for several years, Laura was still very beautiful, but she dressed more naturally. And Shadow no longer had the youthful vitality he had in high school. He looked more dispirited and overall, he seemed rather dull. Aurora's mother. Long time no see. How have you been these years? Shadow took the lead in greeting me. I didn't want to pay attention to them and turned around to leave. Seeing that I ignored him, he chased after me and said, Aurora's mother. The school I applied for in this year's postgraduate entrance examination is University A. We'll meet at University A. Hearing his deliberate pauses and affected way of speaking, I got goosebumps and walked away quickly. The next time I heard news about him was in March of the following year. I heard that he failed the postgraduate entrance examination again. This failure directly caused Shadow's mother to break down emotionally. Shadow's mother still couldn't get rid of the habit of showing off, especially since Shadow didn't score more than 600 points in the college entrance examination, which made her previous bragging in front of others a joke. She had been living a low-profile life for the past few years. This time, when Shadow applied for University A in the postgraduate entrance examination, before the preliminary examination results came out, Shadow's mother had already told everyone about it, boasting that her son was going to study for a postgraduate degree at University A. But Shadow's score was far lower than the score line for the interview and didn't even reach the national score line. So there was no way for him to be transferred to another school. Shadow's mother broke down emotionally again. It was said that the sound of the quarrel between the mother and son could be heard even on the first floor. The mother and son had a falling out, and Shadow's mother even stopped sending Shadow his living expenses. Shadow started to send out resumes to look for a job. At first, he thought that the jobs he could find in his previous life, he could easily get in this life too. But reality taught him a lesson. The resumes he sent out disappeared without a trace. The few companies that invited him for an interview were either for telemarketing or assembly line workers. He didn't think about it. Without the platform provided by a good school and the network resources he could get in school, how could he start so smoothly? And he had given up all of these on his own. During the period of looking for a job, Shadow went to job fairs every day. But as soon as people saw his school and academic performance, they stayed away from him. Even if he got an interview, he would be rejected after just a few words of conversation. He was completely worn out by the job search and still got nothing. But he quickly cheered up, because Lore successfully found a job. It turned out that among the friends Lore had been playing with before, there was a girl who was the daughter of a wealthy family. This girl introduced Lore to her family's company and made her an assistant to the chairman, her father. And Shadow also benefited from it. He got a job as a clerk in this company. At first, their relationship was relatively stable. They worked in the same company and went to and from work together. But Shadow still couldn't get rid of the problem of thinking too highly of himself. He always felt that he could work in a big company and earn hundreds of thousands of yuan a year in his previous life. Working here was a waste of his talent. He always thought he was right and didn't listen to the opinions of his leaders and colleagues. So everyone didn't want to talk to him. After that, Lore's work became busier and busier. She often went on business trips with the boss. Although they were in the same company, they could hardly say a few words to each other in a day. As an assistant to the chairman, Lore's salary was much higher than Shadow's. Shadow had already been suspicious because Lore was on business trips all day and rarely stayed at home. And there were also rumors in the company that Lore was having an affair with the chairman, who was still married and hadn't divorced his wife. One afternoon, Lore came home early from work, which was rare. After a tiring day at work, as soon as she got home, she saw Shadow drinking at the dining table. The house was dirty and messy. "Why are you drinking again? Look at the smell in this house. You can turn any money and don't even know how to clean the house. You're just a useless person," she said. These words really made Shadow angry. "Who are you calling useless?" Shadow stood up unsteadily. "If it wasn't for saving you, could I have got such a low score in the college entrance examination? I went to that crappy university because of you. I earn only 3 or 4 thous, and due on a month in this crappy company. My mother was right. You're really a troublemaker. I would have been fine without your so-called saving. You're just a useless person. Look at our classmates. Everyone is doing better than you now. You were still the first in the class back then. It's really laughable." Lore continued to mock him, poking at his sore spot. Hearing these words, Shadow was so angry that he slapped Lore. The loud slap also revealed the ugly sides of the two of them. Lore was extremely angry. "You're a lunatic. I want to break up with you. It's over between us." After saying that, she turned around and left. After that, the two of them broke up, and Lore also moved out. Shadow was left living alone. And the company fired him because of his poor ability. I thought he would be depressed for a while. However, when I came out of the laboratory building that day, I saw Shadow waiting for me. He was holding flowers in his hand, and his hair seemed to have been styled. When he saw me come out, his eyes lit up. "Mom of Aurora, you're finally out. I've been waiting for you downstairs for several hours. I've reserved a table at that Sichuan cuisine restaurant you used to like the most. You must be hungry. Let's go there." Seeing Shadow come to my door again, I knew he had no good intentions. "I'm not having dinner tonight. Even if I were to have dinner, I wouldn't have it with you. I'm afraid I'd throw up." Upon hearing my sarcasm, the smile on Shadow's face froze. But he still forced a smile and pretended to be affectionate, saying, "Mom of Aurora, I know you still hold a grudge against me. I hurt you at that time. But the person I really love is you. I was just deceived by her. Mom of Aurora, I really love you. Don't you remember how happy we were together in the previous life? Your so-called love is driving the car into the river, making me lose both my child and my own life. My baby could have seen this world soon. But you killed him. You don't love anyone. You only love yourself. And you're even lying to yourself." When I mentioned the previous life, hatred welled up in my heart. And I couldn't wait to kill him on the spot. For this selfish person, killing him would dirty my hands. Such a person can ruin himself all by himself. The better my life is and the more I can look down on him from a high place, the more painful it will be for him. Mom of Aurora. I know you like babies. As long as we're together, our baby will come to us. And we can return to the happy life we had in the previous life. Shadow said with madness in his eyes. Get out. I will never be with you. You don't deserve to mention the child. You're a lunatic. Anyone who is with you will suffer. If you don't leave now, I'll call the police. Our conversation attracted the attention of the security guard, who kept looking in my direction, seeing how much I hated him. Shadow also knew that there was no hope of reconciliation today. Mom of Aurora. I know you're angry when you see me. Please calm down. I'll come to find you another time. After saying that, he left in a dejected manner. I've been busy with experiments recently and haven't paid attention to his whereabouts. Shadow's appearance was a bit abnormal, so I quickly asked a classmate who used to live in the same community. His girlfriend works in the same company as Shadow and is an HR in the company. It turned out that after Shadow was fired, he initially tried to find a job but encountered setbacks repeatedly. He neither had a good education nor work ability and experience, and he was too ambitious while being incompetent. As a result, he hadn't found a job since he was fired. To escape from reality, he became addicted to gambling and had already lost more than 1 million yuan. Now, his parents don't recognize him anymore, and they even moved out of the house where they had lived for decades to avoid him. My classmate specifically reminded me to stay away from him, saying that people addicted to gambling are all crazy and capable of doing anything. Before I could take any measures, I saw him in the social news. The news reported that he drove into a man and a woman. The two were seriously injured and were still being treated, and he was also arrested. Later, I learned that he couldn't pay off his gambling debts and went to borrow money from Lure. As a result, he saw Lure going home with their company's boss, who then taunted and ridiculed him, saying, "If it weren't for my dad praising Aurora at home every day and me thinking that Aurora liked you, I wouldn't have been with you. Let me tell you, I didn't encounter anything on the day of the college entrance examination. I just wanted to call you over. And it would be best if you could bring her along too. If not, at least make her distracted and perform poorly, and teach her a lesson through you." After saying that, he even ordered the security guards to beat Shadow up, in a fit of anger. Shadow thought that it was because of his missing the exam for Lure that he ended up in this situation today. As long as Lure died, everything could go back to the way it was before, and he could also return to the happy days when he earned hundreds of thousands of yuan a year, had a house, a car, and a virtuous wife. Therefore, he began to follow Lure. When he found an opportunity, he stole a car by the roadside and crashed into them, and he himself ended up in prison. In prison, he often went crazy, mumbling, "This isn't me. This isn't me. I want to go back," and finally committed suicide and despair in prison. Looking at the blue sky and white clouds outside the window, now that I'm far away from that scumbag, I know that I will be even happier in the future.